And there's a guy called Philip Hume in my section, who was from England. We, the English tended to form the English group at Harvard. There weren't that many of us, but we had a nice, used to all get together. And Philip Hume and his wife became good friends of Catherine and myself at Harvard. He then went on to run in London Boston Consulting Group. I was managing director at Morgan Stanley. And we decided to do something together. So we decided, after going around in circles for a while, that we would do computing. We would do just the start of these computers coming. And of course, I think we did actually look at buying a company, which some accountant then told us we should wait a day and buy it in bankruptcy. It's obviously we learned early on that we weren't the greatest. We may have learned a lot at Harvard, but it wasn't how to look at small companies and see what the state of play was. So we then formed the company Computacenter. Whose
idea really was it?
I think I don't think anyone could say up, but I would say I think it was the name. The other day, I don't know. I remember sitting down the other day. I had all these stupid ideas like Bombay Computer. I mean, all these stupid names that we came up with. I don't know how we came up with this idea of Computacenter, but I do remember. Again, I can't remember when we sat, because we used to just sit and talk. The idea to make this silly American spelling, Computacenter, which has ruined every time I write centre in a letter now, I always put ER, I have to cross it out and put RE. I think, but instrumental then in getting the business started. I think Philip was, it's interesting. Philip was definitely more instrumental in getting up and running, but because we had two reasons. I had the money, so I had to go I stayed at Morgan Stanley for another year or so, making very good money after the public offering. So I funded the early side, right. But we used to meet at weekends and go off and do all our things together. And so we...
what was the business model then that you were...
The idea very interesting was that the personal computers would become, we didn't see this far forward, but personal computers would be an important new technology for businesses, particularly the finance industry. And at that time, I'd written some programs for floating rate notes and bond yields and that, which I actually sold. I wrote an OCR program, which I remember I sold to loads of banks when I was, as a sideline. So there was this idea that you could do things on this that nobody else could do, and financial institutions were very, very interested in this kind of technology. So we set up Computacenter. Of course, we had to find somewhere to go. We asked everybody where we could go. IBM turned and said, "No way, you don't have the credibility to do this." And I think we finished up getting an Apple dealership, and they said we could do it. No, they couldn't get an Apple dealership because there were too many Apple dealerships.
Right.
And we, having looked at this company who was an Apple dealership, we were able to say, "Well, we know the one in Swindon is going to go bust, so can we have one?" And they kind of said, "Well, yeah." So then we started off with all those things like BBC Micro, Osborne's.
Yes.
Come on, name me all the other ones. All this other rubbishy stuff that kids used to. Yep. Sticky finger kids. And we had a shop in Swindon, in the main centre of Swindon, where we started Computacenter and we sold computers. Philip said, "That's it, I'm going to do it." So Philip got a van. So Boston Consulting Group, being one of the prime consulting groups in the world, and Philip was the managing director of the London office, suddenly got a van. With a few computers, and then we wrote more little programs, and the Apple IIe we sold that. Then the Apple III came, and we sold that to Bank of America, and we sold some little programs with it. And
so the combination was application and here's the micro.
The application was in the early days, to get people to listen to us was important, okay, but obviously it didn't really help later on when we got into the volume business. But it was interesting. We could show people that you could do things with these computers that you couldn't really do with other things. And then, then we decided to open an office in the city. We went into Fenchurch Street, into the Fenchurch Square, was it? And that's when we started to make great progress, because we then were obviously going to see the banks every day, and they were obviously quite interested in what we had to offer, not just because of the programs and that, but because of the fact they started buying quantities. So we were getting those.
You started buying quantities?
10 machines, that's enormous, right. Those kind of orders, 20 machines, And all our clients like Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America. And we built a very good financial business working in the city.
When did you get your IBM dealership?
Well, that was probably about the 82. I think we did get an IBM dealership, and that was because of the city business. And it's quite funny. The guy who ran the city business was Greg Locke for IBM. Who became 5 years ago was our chairman for 5 years. So, but early on he was very dismissive of these little guys. But we had two things. One is I remember I still see some of the old IBMers, but I remember once I had a meeting when we explained that this is much later. We explained that how many we were going to sell next year, and they said we can't do that. They said, well, would that be too much of our margin? You can't do this. So I remember. Tony Hill, that was the guy. Tony Hill, who was the head of IBM at that time. Him said, "You can't do that." And we said, "Well, we're going to do it." And of course, that's what we did. We kept becoming a bigger share of their business, which they didn't like deep down. You know what I mean? There was a lot of resistance. And you've got to remember, all those companies that were set up at the same time. You can tell me their names because I can't remember them now. But there was the one that Gerald Bronson backed. She used to live opposite me over there, that's right. So all these companies had these big plans to become the dominant players in the world, and we were just Computacenter. But we always had these things, the keys to our success later in life when we used to write these things was, and it's true.
When you put the term Computacenter into the index of the Times back copies, the first time you see it is in an advert for who's going to help me make my small business big, with a cartoon of a woman with your friendly IBM personal computer.
Yeah.
This is a personal computer ad for IBM.
Yeah, there you
so
go.
here is IBM advertising directly to its potential customers, and here are the phone numbers of the people who will do it for you, and you're there. There you are.
I wish I could remember the old
linked in Swindon. You're there in '82.
I should take a look. All these companies grew up. They all have big plans to become the dominant world player.
For instance, there's Bike Shop here, which went bang, Peter Ogden destroyed.
Right.
Apart from Computacenter and one or two others.
Well, SCC is the only SCC and Computacenter are the only two left standing, I think. Really.
Yeah. So that's my question. Why? Why are you left standing?
Well, this is what we would. We've written about this a lot. The first thing is that we had a clear strategy. We had a clear strategy that the personal computer will become a significant business machine, and obviously quite soon we realised that these could be linked together. It could be an important thing. Secondly, we had enough capital to not, to grow very quickly, and you do need capital to grow quickly. And thirdly, which is the one we always like, we stuck to our knitting.